The 80s were an incredible time for horror, with some of the best horror films ever made releasing, and some which are still better than some of the slop that we're getting now. And today I'm joined by 7 Feet Under to discuss our top 10 of this era. These are the best 80s horror movies. Right, yeah, so today I am joined by 7 Feet Under. So, how's it going? Thanks for coming on.
Howdy, howdy. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I mean, the 80s were a great time for horror, and today we're talking about our top 5 80s horror movies. How do you feel about like the 80s era of horror?
Honestly, when you asked me to, oh, and by the way, thanks for reaching out and coming up with this idea because I definitely didn't. But when you asked me to pick a top five, now just quickly looking through some 80s horror movies, they have some serious bangers here, like a lot. So it was actually a little tough for me to actually pick five. So I think that's pretty self evident how the 80s were for horror.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, it was really difficult making my list. I knew one which I wanted to throw on there just because I love it. And then the other four, I was like, all right, how do I want to go with this? Because there's classic ones which we might get a comment on if we don't have it, and then there's also like ones which is I personally really like.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Honestly, if I'm being honest, there are plenty of horror movies that I know that are super famous from the 80s and I haven't seen. So if anyone wants to tear me a new a-hole because I didn't mention a certain one, there's a decent chance I legitimately have not seen it. So just trying to save myself a little bit, but more comments, even if they're hate comments, it just helps you out in the algorithm. So send the hate if you must.
Yeah. So, well, let's just get into it then. What is your number five?
My number five, I had to add this one. My number five is Basket Case. For me, honestly, it's easy and hard to pick this one because this movie is legitimately my first favorite. It's so bad, it's good. This is a legit shit movie. It's not good at all. It's so poorly put together. It is phenomenal to watch. I went in kind of blind when I first watched it, and I first watched this movie like last year. It might have even been the year before, so it was actually a really nice surprise. Have you ever seen Basket Case?
All right, so I already have to make a confession. I've never seen Basket Case. I've heard of it. I know about the little dude in the basket. I've never seen it before.
Honestly, you are in for a treat. So if you actually look up this movie at all and the creator of it, you'll know or you'll find out that this was such a poorly run project, like poor. He just it was shot, I think, over several years because he just kept on saving up money to shoot for a day. And then he kept on saving up money to then shoot for another day. He had never actually had the funds collected to shoot consecutively and just make it like a tight schedule. So that's actually pretty interesting. Oh, and of course, there are some insanely iconic scenes that, they're so bad because the director did a lot of the special effects himself. So it looks like if a child did like a one of those stop motion videos, like I'm like a 7-year-old with like claymation or whatever, it's pretty much the exact level of that because what's his name? Belial? Fucking weird name. Belial is a just he looks like Geodude from Pokemon, essentially. He's just head and arms. That's it. But apparently he has the strength of a Mr. Olympian for some reason. And apparently he can walk all over walls, even though he has no legs. So he's just dragging his ass up and down walls as he's killing people. It is so good. It's so bad. There's so much to say.
I need to watch that. That sounds absolutely amazing.
No, no, dude, you're in for a treat if you watch it. Honestly, if you go into it knowing it's a so bad it's good movie, yeah, invite some friends over and just have the time of your lives, especially if they're sarcastic friends.
Yeah, I mean, most of my friends are sarcastic friends, so that'll probably go amazingly. But my number five is actually, in my opinion, they're so bad. It's a good movie, even though I don't think it's too bad. I know a lot of people don't like this. A lot of people love it. It's a trauma movie, so it's got some very weird parts to it, but it's getting a remake this year, which I'm terrified for, but it's the Toxic Avenger. It's one of my like it's one of my like little guilty pleasures. I watched it for the first time last year. It's so goofy and so like mean at the same time. It's like the perfect mix, and the sequel's like even worse, but I still love them up until the fourth one, which I just didn't really like. But these first three, specifically like the first one, like the effects, the transformation itself is so cool. Like when all like his skin and everything and is like bubbling and falling off like in his bathroom, it's so funny. It's so cool.
I'm blown away. There's 4 of those things?
There's 4 of them and a new remake coming out.
I knew I was going to have to eventually watch it because the remake is coming out, so I do like a comparison. But yeah, I've never seen the Toxic Avengers, so I don't really have anything to add.
Okay, I don't want to like spoil a lot for it, but it's got some of the like most mean dialogue I've ever seen in the movie. But I've actually like liked it, the movie. Like that's the best way I can describe it. And it's very I wouldn't even really call it a horror movie, but it's on this list because Google counts it as one. So it's more of a superhero movie that's really, really violent and very raunchy. It's great.
Oh, nice. I mean, I'm definitely going to watch it because I kind of have to play on the good old YouTube algorithm. But yeah, can't wait. You want to move on, or is there more you wanted to say about it?
I think that's really it for the Toxic Avenger. What's your number 4?
Oh, for me, this is a movie that I've sung the praises time and time again, and it's The Monster Squad. Easy pick. It is an unbelievably fun movie. I will admit there is a bit of nostalgia that like kind of fogs my opinion on the movie, and honestly, I don't give a shit. This movie is amazing. Not only does it have my favorite on-screen werewolf, it actually has my favorite on-screen werewolf transformation. So everyone who thinks American Werewolf in London has the best can suck a fat one, because the one in Monster Squad is actually quick. It doesn't drag. It is brutal. It is in your face. I love the look and the aesthetic of the Wolfman. It also has my favorite Gill Man. I used to call him the creature of the Black Lagoon, but apparently his actual name is the Gill Man. I think he looks phenomenal in the movie. The Mummy, who cares? He's kind of a throwaway character. I also love the look of Dracula. He looks like such a badass. He has so many badass scenes, especially towards the end of the movie where just lightning is channeling through him. And then you got scenes where he's just literally walking through cops and they just can do nothing to stop him. And when I say nostalgia, that kind of fogs it because I do like the story of the movie, or just stories in general. I do like them to have some like serious stakes, and yeah, a lot of people actually die in Monster Squad, but of course, there's tons of plot armor when it comes to the kids because it is like a PG movie. It may be PG-13. It might actually been the time before PG-13 even existed. I don't know, but yeah, so all of the kids have a shit ton of plot armor, and honestly, I can overlook it. It's amazing. Oh yeah, and I also love the movie's Frankenstein. He looks amazing too. Have you seen
Honestly,
Monster Squad?
all right. Once again, um, I have. I actually only heard about this movie a month ago, which
What are
honestly,
you doing with your life?
well, I've only been alive for like not very long, so like
That's a shit excuse. Watch the Monster Squad.
I think my parents might have had it on like DVD or something in like our old house, but I just never got around to watching it. Or there's just like some really shit animation movie called Monster Squad or something like that, which wouldn't surprise me. Um, but I need to get around to watching it still. But everyone says it's so good, so I might just watch that before I watch Basket Case. I might watch that like tomorrow.
Well, I mean, did you ever see The Goonies?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so it's a monster version of The Goonies. Easy
Ah.
comparison to make. You can draw a straight line with it. Lots of comparisons. They're both great. They're both super fun. But anyway, we can just move on to your number 4.
All right, so my number 4 is a movie which is kind of needed on a list of 80s horror movies. It's one of, in my opinion, like the best first horror movies in a slasher franchise. It's got an incredible villain with a really unique premise. It's a Nightmare on Elm Street. It really needs no introduction, even though I just gave it an introduction. It's so much fun. The kills are amazing. The practical effects are amazing. Robert England is amazing. And I mean, yeah, I just love everything about it. Like, the one thing which I'll always find really cool is the rotating room. It's one of my favorite scenes in all of horror.
Honestly, Nightmare on Elm Street is a classic, and I'm actually pissed when I made my 5. I should have just cut Basket Case out of my 5, and I absolutely should have picked Dream Warriors. I've seen very recently all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and Dream Warriors is my absolute favorite of all of them. It is the most fun. It has the most creative kills. I love all of it. I mean, I get there's a ton of praise for the first movie, rightfully so. I don't have anything against that. But when I did review the movie and I compared it to the remake, there are a few plot holes and inconsistencies that I think a lot of people like to overlook when they're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. But it's still a great movie. I love Freddy. He's a great iconic slasher. He's on the Mount Rushmore of slashers.
Yeah, honestly, I can agree with you on that. Like, there are a few plot holes there, but on Dream Warriors though, I completely agree with that as well. It's got like a really unique premise, even though the original's really unique. I love all their different powers, and I feel like they cast the perfect people for each of the characters. They all embody them really well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely agree.
Um, yeah. So, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is The Fly. Probably one of the best body horror movies ever done. It was the Jeff Goldblum movie before he started to really only play like the same character in literally every single movie that he's ever in. I was actually pretty surprised when I watched this for the first time, like how well it holds up. Obviously, practical effects in the 80s, for some reason, have just stood the test of time damn near perfectly. I don't get what exactly they figured out and why we forgot to do it, but they just knew exactly what they needed to do and they just got it done. And for a surprisingly a little amount of money. But yeah, Jeff Goldblum is amazing in this movie. Obviously, the fly transformation and how it builds and everything is just done amazingly well. But on top of that, there is a bit of romance in the movie, and I was actually pretty surprised at like how much I actually liked them as a couple. Because obviously, he meets this reporter chick who's not really super interested in her job because she's just reporting on like scientific discoveries and just like new inventions, that kind of a thing. And so when he invites her over to his place in order to show off the teleportation device, she's really not super into it. And then he does it and it just wows her. So you would think that her relationship with him is not very legitimate. Like she's just using him for, when this teleportation gets like published, and then she's going to get super famous, so it's going to be really good for her. But later on in the movie, you'll actually see like she's buying clothes for him with her own money. Like she wants to improve his style. Like she genuinely likes this guy. So when they fall out because the guy's literally falling apart and becoming a giant fly monster, it really just it hits hard. And yeah, no, damn good movie. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, The Fly is great. It's so interesting, and honestly, like everything you said, I completely agree with. And I think honestly, the reason that those effects still stand up is because of like 20 like 2008 to like 20 like 15, they were just overusing like terrible, really shitty CGI to the point where like any good practical effects were just lost. We're starting to get it back now, but they still really overuse CGI in horror movies to the point where it's just kind of like just boring at this point. But yeah, so my number three is actually a movie which I found out a lot of people hate. I don't really get the hate. I know that it's a big change from the original one. It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's so much fun. It's got like one of the most insane characters in the history of movies with Lefty. The man gets two mini chainsaws and starts like running around the place just trying to murder people. It's great. The gore is like next level. Like they like you knock down a wall and then a bunch of like guts and stuff comes like piling out of it. It's awesome. And I didn't think that we would ever meet Grandma, but this movie also introduces Grandma to the franchise. So I mean, you gotta love it. And the comedy aspects also really work. And sure, there are some bits which are just kind of weird, like when Leatherface was like getting a bit all touchy feely with the chainsaw, but that's besides the point. The film absolutely like slaps. It's great.
Well, I wish I could say that I've seen it. I mean, I've seen a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, but I guess I've mostly just seen the original and all of the remakes because for some reason they just love remaking this movie and not really making like sequels, or they do like prequels or origin stories or whatever. But yeah, no, I've never. This is the one where like a lot of the copies got destroyed or something. So actually, like having a physical copy of this movie is like really hard to find. Is that it, or is it the third one that happens?
I think that's the third one because the third one's like really weird and obscure. Like I've only seen it like once or twice, and it was just really, really weird. I think that was the third one because I think I read that somewhere.
Well, all right then. I mean, I definitely, obviously, I got to watch the second one, but I'll just go ahead and move on. My number two is, of course, The Blob. You can't have a top five without talking about The Blob. The Blob is considered like probably one of the best horror remakes of all time. I've never actually seen the original. I think the original is in black and white or something like that. But when I saw the Blob for the first time, I was shocked at how again amazing the practical effects were and how incredibly depressing this movie is. I mean, a lot of people do die, and of course, it's just always these scenes of just helplessness that just is back to back, just people just being trapped against a monster that's just overwhelming. There's just nothing they can do. Sometimes it's surprisingly fast, sometimes it's slow and it takes its time. And these people die these really slow, really brutal deaths, and it just it really just gets to you. Again, when I first saw the movie, I was really surprised. I really thought it was an alien, but it turns out to be like a human government, of course, a U.S. government experiment just gone wrong. I'm like, geez, if this is for world domination, you did well. It killed the entire town pretty effectively. I mean, yeah, it has a happy ending and everything, but yeah. Oh, and of course, it did one of the most ballsy things you can do in cinema, and it's you kill a kid on screen. Not a lot of movies can do that. Not a lot of movies try, but this one did, and of course, it was shocking. It was brutal. They didn't pussyfoot about it. It was just there.
Oh yeah, the Blob is great, but I before I like watched this one, I always thought the Blob was like a big pink like gelatinous substance because I originally ever like heard anything that was called the Blob from the Goosebumps books and like
Oh
those
yeah, yeah,
movies.
yeah.
I thought it was like just some like weird like pink like jello thing that just like moved around like eating people. But yeah.
Yeah, okay, so your turn. What's next?
Right, so mine is also um quite a interesting movie, but it's also one of the best remakes of all time. Well, technically, I wouldn't really call it a remake. It's more of a reimagining. It's The Thing. It's
Ah, of course.
it's one of the best horror, if not the best. I wouldn't call it my number one, but it's one of the best horror movies ever made. You've got some great practical effects and gore. You've got a really cool kind of like, I wouldn't really call it a who done it, but just sort of like a who is the thing, what is the thing, why is the thing, where is the thing, that kind of thing. Um, it's really interesting, and it sort of just leaves you on like an ending where you're still really unsure of like who is the thing, and that's why I did kind of like you didn't really get like a full answer, even though a lot of people online will say who it is, but I feel like the film never really specifically just flat out says that dude right there. Here's the thing. It never really says that, and that's what I really enjoy about it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, I actually watched the original, like the thing from outer space. Like just this last October, me and my siblings, we have this horror movie marathon. We watched 31 scary movies in 31 days, and I picked The Thing because there's a lot of the classic Universal monster movies I haven't seen. So for that month, I picked and we watched The Thing from Outer Space, Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Bride, the original Dracula, Nosferatu, and The Creature from the Black Lagoon. And easy win, the original Thing from Outer Space was the best out of all of them. It actually really surprised me that like how good that movie was. And number two was the Creature from the Black Lagoon. That aged surprisingly well. But yeah, no, it's such a talky kind of movie that it sounds like the whole thing could have been played on the radio and you would know exactly what was happening. All of the characters are super likable, and coincidentally, I'm just going to pivot to my number one, which actually was The Thing. It is such a good movie. I can only think of literally one scene that seems a little dated. It's like one of the first scenes in the movie. It's when the helicopters and the foreign people are trying to shoot the dog, and one of the older guys in the crew, he busts a window with his pistol and he starts shooting out of it. That looked like something straight from like I don't know the 60s or something like that. It's just that one scene that seemed dated, but everything else, of course, is amazing. This thing is just next level threat level. There's lots of paranoia that's done super well. Kurt Russell, obviously, that dude aged like fine wine. That dude, not
Oh
only
yeah,
is he a good looking guy, but I love like damn near all of his movies. I'm sure I haven't seen all of them, but if that's where that guy started out and he just kept on going, dude, fuck yeah, give him more roles.
yeah, definitely. It's one of the best like horror movies, one of the best whodunit movies, one of the best movies ever made, and probably besides maybe Halloween, one of John Carpenter's best movie. But moving on to my number one, which is a film which I just love so much. Some of the sequels are really good. I don't think there's any bad movies in the franchise. It's Evil Dead. It's so fun. Like the Deadites are terrifying in this movie. I love the use of like kind of like a stop motiony thing when they're all like disintegrating and burning and stuff near the end. It's so cool. Bruce Campbell was great as the lead. Um, sure, he very much comes into the role a lot more in the sequels, and um, despite there being one scene which I like don't really like watching with this movie, everything else is so good. Like I love the like just the like really really like kind of low budgety feel to the movie. It really adds to the charm.
And to be clear, you're just talking about the first movie. You're not talking. I'm pretty sure Evil Dead 2 also came out in the 80s, but you're just talking about the first movie.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I really liked it. And I, of course, I mean, obviously in the sequel, they started to bring a little bit more humor into it. And I was a big fan of that because I really liked Evil Dead 2. I really liked Army of Darkness. Ash versus the Evil Dead was an amazing TV show. But now they're actually going back with these more recent movies. They're going back to being super duper serious, like the
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2018, I think that was the year. And then Evil
Uh,
Dead Rise, which that was one of my favorite movies of the year. Evil Dead Rise to me was super fun. And then we have another Evil Dead movie that I think is coming out this year, or is it coming out next year?
it's either this year or next year, but they've like got like two movies in production. They announced one like Evil Dead Burn, other one got no idea when that's coming out, but I
Honestly, keep
need
them
them now.
coming. Keep them coming. They are
Oh
doing
yeah.
very well. I mean, at first I wasn't a huge fan of Evil Dead 2018 because I didn't quite want to let go of the comedic charm of the original Evil Dead movies, but Evil Dead Rise, I finally like accepted like this is the new Evil Dead. This is just what it's going to be from now on. I loved it. But yeah, the original Evil Dead, yeah, it's great. And obviously some of the scenes, especially like the creepy moments, are super iconic. And of course, like Deadites are there's I actually mentioned this in my review of Evil Dead Rise and the Pope's Exorcist. There's so many possession movies that they all, a lot of them just seem very generic these days. There's just same bullshit happens every time, not really that big of a deal. But Evil Dead stands out because it's a mix of possession and zombies, because everyone is possessed, but they're just as infectious like zombies. And of course, they have a lot of personality to them. That's why they're intentionally malicious, which I mean, they're possessed by demons. So yeah, no, they're obviously super hard to kill. So their threat level's pretty high. And yeah, yeah, Evil Dead. I'm glad we got the first one because thanks to that, we got all these awesome sequels.
Yeah, it's one of the most consistent like franchises. Like I don't think there is a bad film in the whole franchise. There's not a bad like season of the TV show. I mean, I would love to see like Bruce Campbell. He said he'd maybe do it as like a animated show, which honestly I'd be fine with.
Yeah, me too.
Like Robert England said the same thing with Nightmare. Why not eventually finally make Freddy versus Jason versus Ash at this point? Like, you know, you don't even need to get a Jason voice actor, just have him in there.
Yeah, because that good old comic that apparently is pretty popular. It's also pretty wild, but yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Obviously, when Bruce Campbell he keeps on complaining about like how physically taxing it is. Like, dude, just lift weights more often. I don't know, just have it be a more physically fit guy, just in general. I mean, I loved how he did his own stunts in Army of Darkness and everything, but like, come on. Do it for the fans. And of course, after the Evil Dead video game didn't do super well, he's like, I kind of miss playing Ash. Yeah, no shit, because you're not doing anything else. Everyone wants you back. I'm sure you'll get paid and it'll be worth your while. Just do a few things, pass the torch if you must, or just obviously, have technically a fourth season of Ash versus the Evil Dead because it got canceled and it left off them traveling to the super future. I'm not a huge fan of that idea, so hopefully they'll just be in the future, super future. Again, in this hypothetical, they're in the super future for like an episode or two, and then they just come back to present day, which is nice and dandy. But I
Yeah.
think that's it for me.
Yeah, that's it for me as well. Thanks for, coming on and doing this.
Hey, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for the idea. This was fun.
Yeah, of course. And you know, um I think if this video tells us anything, it's that we need more horror movies like the 80s. Like please bring back like more like 80s inspired horror.
Hey, we had a lot of bangers last year, so I'm a little hopeful for this year that we're also going to get some bangers.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.
Bye bye.